Finding happiness is important for all of us. And to do that, we've got to feel safe and have some understanding around passion and acceptance. I spoke to Angela Horenik, who's a therapist who actually has a way of trying to achieve that. Do you think enough people, we don't talk enough about passion? And I think, do you think some of the conflict we have within ourselves in relationships is the fact that we ignore our passion because there's so much else going on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we ignore so much about ourselves, period. Right? We don't go inward. We're not reflective.
Why?
We're in a Western culture, and if you really want to know, it's because it's been fast-moving, patriarchal, very, very capitalist, right? You go to the East, it's not like that at all. Right? People are slower, money's not an issue, they're calm, they have prayer, they're contemplative. The Western mind, the Western person, it's just not trained the same way.
Because we're too driven?
Yeah, it's the almighty buck. Okay.
Everything evolves around the dollar.
Well, and I would say in the last 15, 20 years, certainly in my lifetime, things have changed, right? When I was a child, money wasn't as important as it is today in society in general, in the Western world.
So we're only talking about a couple of decades.
That's right, yeah.
And so how has it changed?
Well, you talk to the kids today, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, you ask them what their aspirations are. They just want to make money. It's like, well, that's not an aspiration. Like, what do you want to do? I just want money. So it's sort of like going inside, what are your passions? What do you believe in? What do you want to do? What do you like to do? They don't go there. They want money. So it's like we have to stop the train. The train is going down a track, right? And there are those of us who, I never got on that train to begin with. I had a lot of suffering in my childhood. My dad manipulated with money. We didn't come from money, but he was a doctor, and so he was a workaholic. Money, money, money. And I just was like, you know what, I want happiness. That's not happiness. I'm being manipulated, I'm being coerced, I'm being bought on some level, and I don't want it.
It's interesting because the survey that we've done, one of the things that come back is the emotional aspect, and that happiness is obviously the key. And the money aspect is really challenging for people because I think in terms of relationships, that's one of the really big humps that people have to get over. There seems to be a lot of conflict around money, which is exactly what you're talking about. And obviously, maybe why you went into doing what you're doing is because of your childhood and what you saw. And now you're sort of a therapist who sort of deals with relationships around, partly around money as well, with your background being an accountant. So what are the most common things that you see, the most common problems that you come across in terms of relationships and money?
Well, what I'll say is that people fall into kind of two categories around money. They are either an indulger or they're a withholder. So they will either, and this in terms of happiness, okay, and emotions, they will indulge and try and fill this, what I call the God hole, right? There's this, I'm not enough, I don't do enough, I don't have enough, and they're running for it, they're going for it. So they're indulging that part. Whether they're not feeling enough, so then they're going to be a workaholic or, into gambling or sex or booze or whatever it is over there to fill that God hole, right? That's an indulger. That's a category. So then I'll see them as a client that comes and they'll just say, I've got a great job or I've got everything financially I want, but I'm not happy.
Yeah.
I need something more. I'm stuck. I want to move into my creativity. I'm stuck. What do I do? So that's one kind of client. And then the other, on the other hand, is a withholder, right? A person who's a caretaker. So she or he will withhold taking care of self, and they'll take care of others, right? So in some ways they're an indulger too, because they're always caretaking outward. And they withhold. So they'll buy things for family, for friends, for children, but they won't take care of themselves.
So you've kind of got this complete extreme on either side. And often those two people are in the one relationship.
Often they are. And you know what? If we go below that, it's the same root cause, right? usually attachment issues, usually early childhood stuff, insecurity, all of that. And I work with people that go, they've already figured out their belief systems, and it's like, okay, well, I got that all sussed, but how come I'm not happy? Where's the happiness bit? I say, okay, so let's go deeper. So I do meditations and guided visualizations to take them back into that subconscious place, which is pre-verbal. Like, you can't get there with words, right? You have a little 18-month-old baby. You look at her running around. That's where we got wounded. So to help a client, for instance, come out of that, it's like I got to bring them back and work with, they work with themselves, but I take them there. What would an 18-month-old baby want right now? You know? Cuddles, affection, time, softness, just presence. We don't have presence in our life anymore. Nobody has time.
I think, I mean, I know that our years are formed obviously at a very early age, and all sort of the different relationships we have at that time really defines who we are as we get older.
Absolutely.
So how do you go around correcting those? Is it about identification first? The fact that, you know, for any person who has an addiction to anything, they've got to admit they've got an addiction before they can fix it. So how do we actually look back and honestly look at ourselves without trying to bluff who we are?
Well, I mean, we don't even have to go to the extreme of addiction. We can just say attachment, right? I mean, because as far as I'm concerned, an addiction is just an attachment that's gone too far. All right? Awareness. You just said it. Absolutely. That's always the first step. It's like there's this moment of clarity that comes in. It's like, things aren't right in my life, right? I don't like X, Y, or Z. I'm just not liking the trajectory. So it's awareness is first. And then comes the step of acceptance, right? Often people go, I'm aware of something, I'm going to change it, right? Especially in the West. I'm aware of it, let's change it. It doesn't stick. It doesn't stick because there's been no acceptance of this shadow part, of this dark side. And, you know, we talk about happiness. We want happiness. If you want to understand happiness, you have to contemplate your suffering.
Contemplate your suffering.
Your suffering.
See what you have to kind of visualize?
No, you have to feel it again. If you can feel it again, you can heal it. Right? So it's going back into the feeling part of being. And again, people don't have time for it. It's like, let's get on with it. What's the next thing? Fix, change, let's go.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. You know, some of my sessions, somebody would come in, and if there was a camera there, it would be two people sitting in silence.